Good morning, Suidlanders. How are you? We trust that you're well. It's morning here it's 11 o'clock in Livingston, Montana, which is the main town that services Yellowstone National Park, and it's on the Interstate 90, which I'm driving on back eastward, yes, having been in the far west of the USA for the past couple of weeks. And I want to talk to you about three interrelated subjects: inflation and poverty and some conspicuous wealth. So I'm driving around a campsite just behind the motel that I've been staying in. You haven't seen much yet, but you'll see a bunch of things shortly. And I'm just giving you a rough impression to begin with. You can see that's a parked vehicle. So these are RVs, what they call RVs. Oopsie. That's the wrong pathway there. And these are people, and that's obviously, these are like plet homes on the left-hand side. And these are people who have come to this town and they stay for long periods of time. Mostly poor people living out of basically caravans. And here we have a little suburb, as I say, just behind the motel that I've been in. And you can see some nice little houses, and you can see some fairly rough dwellings. The road is not good, hence the bumping and shuddering. Hopefully you're getting an idea of the very ordinary circumstances of many Americans. There are many places in the USA where there's spectacular wealth, beautiful houses, lovely gardens and lawns and properties. Many. But there are many people who are not doing well. And that's in spite of the fact that, number one, it's the USA, and the dollar is powerful. Therefore, many things in the USA are relatively cheap relative to salaries, and in spite of the fact that there is tremendous social security support. If you go on the internet and do a bit of scouting, you can see some amazing figures of how many people get rent support, how many people get food stamp support, and various other forms of social security and related programs. Nevertheless, there is this huge underclass of people that is doing very badly, an underclass of millions of human beings who live in squalid circumstances. Something that most South Africans wouldn't expect. The inflation in the USA is getting out of hand. There is a website called Shadow Stats, and it's known by the name of the guy who runs it, who owns it, and it's referred to as John Williams Shadow Stats. If you just search Shadow Stats, you'll get it. This guy, John Williams, has endeavored to prove over years and years now that inflation in the USA is far worse than the government is willing to admit. Inflation in the USA, in his opinion, is, I believe, at present, something like 16% per year. And I listened to an interview in which somebody who had read more of the in-depth, detailed material on John Williams' ShadowStat site said that John Williams said that there's an argument to be made that it is in fact 27%. Admittedly, that was about 18 months ago. But presumably it's roughly the same. So it's now 16 or perhaps 20 or 25 or 27, something like that. Which is leading to many Americans suffering gravely. Of course, they have safety nets here in the form of Social Security and related things. It's true. But what is equally true is that people are being pounded by the changing fortunes, the economic fortunes of the United States of America. I'm going on I-90 East, Interstate 90, otherwise known as US 90 East. If you saw that signboard. Motel accommodation in the USA is a very good indicator of this unbelievable inflation. When we toured the USA 6 years ago, Andre Kutsia and I, excuse me, I'm just watching for a vehicle on the left-hand side. We stayed in motels consistently in the $38 to $55 range, and really $55 was very exceptional according to my best recollection. I would say that 90% of the motels that we stayed in charged between $38 and $48. Now, we stayed in the cheapest chain of motels in the USA consistently. They're called Motel 6. Last night, I stayed in a cheap, crummy motel. The room wasn't bad, but the rest of it is crummy. For $60. A week and a half ago, I stayed in the same motel and it cost me $72. The prices change daily across the USA, according to market conditions. I've been forced to stay in motels that have cost $111, I beg your pardon, $119, $129, and I stayed in one fairly posh region of the USA over a fairly busy weekend, but in a very mediocre hotel, not strictly speaking a motel. You might class it as 2-star or 1-star. That cost me $240 a night, and I had no choice. I had to do a long series of interviews, 6 hours worth altogether, about Suidlanders and things happening in South Africa, with quite a prominent guy who was very interested in the subject. $240 a night was the best rate that I could get in that town, and outside of it. I drove about 30 miles thinking that I could save some money, and I couldn't. So inflation in the USA is really a big thing, and people are being crushed by it. As I say, if you do a little bit of scratching on the internet, you can find some fascinating figures about the amount of money being paid and the number of recipients of social security grants. And it's leading to a phenomenal crime wave. This morning, I watched a news report about a crime wave, a shoplifting crime wave in New York City. I'll give you a few figures. 93% of the grocery shops, grocery stores in New York City are experiencing routine shoplifting. Now, whether routine means twice a week or twice a month, I couldn't tell you, but it was reported as if routine meant something alarming. And many of those 93%, I don't know what proportion, they didn't say, claim that they are experiencing shoplifting daily. Now, somebody might say, well, you know, what does routine mean and what proportion of 93%? Let me give you a sense of perspective on that vagueness. You can find in many regions of the USA ordinary goods on a shelf locked up. So toothpaste, for example. I've seen video footage of at least one supermarket that locks up behind perspex. In a normal fridge, like we have in South Africa, display fridge, open display fridge, but with a framework, an aluminium framework, and a series of perspex, clear perspex lockers, clear perspex lids, if you like, in front of it. Meat in the butchery section of a supermarket. That's how bad theft is becoming in the retail environment in the USA. I don't know where it's going to end and how soon it's going to end, but I think that I can complete this video by saying that it appears as if the USA has a one-way ticket. There is nothing to suggest that this is going to be fixed. Not Donald Trump, nothing is going to remedy the decline of the USA in the foreseeable future. And that, of course, is exacerbated by the enormous debt that the USA is incurring. As we've discussed previously, the debt of the USA is now just over $33 trillion, and Janet Yellen has announced that for the months of October past, November present, December, January, February and March, for those 6 months, for those 2 quarters, she will have to borrow almost $1.6 trillion more. The USA's debt by the end of March will be officially just about $35 trillion. That will have a detrimental effect upon the purchasing power, the value of the dollar, and so the situation will be worsened even further. regardless of anything else. If employment picks up, if prices stabilize, if that's that, the next thing, it's all going to be undermined by what we know for a fact. Huge debt burden, huge undermining of the value of the dollar. So this is a crisis that promises to be ongoing. Anyway, we trust you enjoyed that video, and I'll make some more. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Okie dokes. Bye-bye.